Greetings and salutations, viewers. Welcome to ConnectiCon 2018. We are here yet again. And this time round, we're doing an interview with Keith DeCandido. Thank you for taking some time out to talk to us.
My pleasure.
We're hoping to learn a bit about your most recent releases and what are some of your books that you're proud of that you'd like our viewers to know about?
I've written a lot of books. I've been doing this for the better part of 25 years. I've had about 56 novels out. The most recent work of mine that has come out is a short story in an anthology called Baker Street Irregulars, The Game is Afoot, which is the second Baker Street Irregulars anthology that are all alternative takes on Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
Very cool.
And I've had stories in each of those two anthologies. I've also got two novels coming out later this year. One is called Mermaid Precinct, which is the latest in my fantasy police procedural series. It's kind of Law and Order meets Lord of the Rings.
Very
or
nice.
Dungeons and Dragnet, as one reviewer called it. There have been 4 novels and 1 short story collection, which were recently reissued by eSpec Books.
Oh, cool.
And eSpec is going to be publishing Mermaid Precinct later this year. I have to actually finish writing it first, which is a very important first step in the publishing process. And I'm starting a new series that's going to be published by Wordfire Press, which I'm hoping to have out this year, called A Furnace Sealed, which is an urban fantasy novel about a nice Jewish boy from the Bronx who hunts monsters.
As you do.
Yes. I'm also working on some other 2 tie-in projects that I'm actually not allowed to talk about yet.
Fair enough.
But suffice it to say, they are very cool, and I'm looking forward to them coming out. One is going to be done, and this is something I think you're going to be seeing a lot more of in the next few years. It's going to be serialized in short chunks, like 1,000-word chunks or so, in a serialized storyline designed to be read by people on their phones.
Okay.
Because more and more people are consuming their media on their little mini tablets,
Yep.
and that they can carry around in their pockets. So this is one of several projects that I've been in talks with people about that are designed for that.
Cool.
Where the idea is to release it serially in a form that is easily consumed on one's smartphone. So we're hoping that that'll do well. That's going to be a game tie-in. I'm also doing another tie-in novel that'll be out early 2019.
Nice.
Which I look forward to being able to talk about someday.
Stay tuned to eventually learn more about these secrets.
Yes. In the meantime, and I've done a lot of work in a lot of tie-in universes, about 30 different licensed universes, from Alien to Zorro, and I try to use the alphabet whenever I can. And I've done a lot of Star Trek work. You asked what work I'm proudest of, and that's really hard to narrow down. And it's like asking a parent which is your favorite child. Yes, exactly. Probably one I like to mention, just because of the influence the book has had, is a Star Trek novel I did called Articles of the Federation. It came out in 2005. It was basically a Star Trek version of The West Wing. It's a year in the life of the Federation president. In a previous Star Trek novel I'd written about a presidential election. It was a Next Generation novel called A Time for War, A Time for Peace. And President Nan Bako was elected president in that novel. And then Articles picked up from there and shows her first year in office. That first year, among other things, is right after the movie Star Trek Nemesis. So among the many issues that President Bako has to deal with is the fact that one of the major powers in the quadrant recently had its entire Senate turned into pixie dust. And the person who turned them into pixie dust then got blown up. So there's this major power vacuum in the Romulan and Star Empire, and that's one of the many things she has to deal with, including the Federation's ongoing, even though it's 4 years after the Dominion War, that war is still, there were a lot of issues related to that. Yes, exactly. So there's all that to deal with. There was a lot of paranoia about shapeshifters throughout both the lead up to the Dominion War and the time of the Dominion War, and it takes a while for that kind of paranoia to go away. And so that was part of it, and various other things. The novel wasn't a huge success sales-wise. It's probably my best reviewed book, but because the people who bought it loved it, but not that many people came in the first place. But the novel continued to have a lot of influence. President Bako became a major supporting character in Star Trek fiction going forward. She appeared in more than a dozen novels by a variety of different authors. And I mean, one of the reasons why I did the book is because Star Trek has given us a lot of other governments. We've seen the inner workings of the Klingon government, the Romulan government, the Cardassian government, the Bajoran government. We never really got an in-depth look at the Federation government. And Articles was designed, at least in part, to address that lack. And because I established so much, other writers made use of it.
That's really cool.
And like I said, President Baco became a major supporting character, which I was really happy about. So even though her solo novel wasn't a huge success, the character became a major supporting player in the fiction going forward. So that was cool.
Really cool. Would you be able to talk to us a bit about what your creative process is like in regards to putting your own stories together, maybe versus the licensed universes that you have to work with?
The process is the same. I write left to right like everybody else, but
top to bottom.
Yes, exactly. But the process is the same. With licensed fiction, you have to write a plot outline first, and get that approved before you ever write a word. So I don't just write a Star Trek novel and hope for the best. I write a plot outline that has to be approved by, in this case, CBS, because they're the owners of the property. But there's always somebody from the license holder, from the copyright owner, who has to approve everything. You know, for Star Wars, it's Disney. For Star Trek, it's CBS. I did some Farscape work, both in novel and comic book form. That all had to be approved by the Jim Henson Company. I did a Sleepy Hollow novel, which had to be approved by 20th Century Fox, and so on. So it's always somebody has to approve every step of the process, not just the writing process, but also the cover art, the back cover copy, everything. And but my process is the same when it's my own work. The only difference is nobody else has to approve it. But I still write an outline first. I personally find it much easier to write the book if I know where it's going. If I don't, I'll wander around and never get anything done. But that's what works best for me. Part of it is because my earliest work, for the first 6 or 7 years of my career, all I did was tie-in fiction. So I had to outline everything first. Actually, 10 years. My first short story was published in 1994. My first novel that I actually kept the copyright on was Mermaid Precinct in 2004. So in those 10 years, everything I did was work for hire, so it had to be plotted out first. But I like working that way. I'm more comfortable working that way, so it's much easier. I'm less rigid about sticking to the outline on my own work, obviously. If something comes up in the storyline that changes things, I don't have to run it past anybody.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. I mean, where the original inspiration comes from varies wildly. And that's a great thing. You know, there's inspiration everywhere. You know, the urban fantasy series that I'm starting this year about the monster hunter in the Bronx, that actually came out of working for the U.S. Census Bureau in 2010, where I got to go to. I live in the Bronx, which is the northernmost borough of New York City, and my census work took me all over the Bronx. And that's what got the wheels turning about doing something that was Bronx focused. Because when people write about New York City, they usually only write about Manhattan south of 125th Street.
Maybe a little bit of Brooklyn.
Maybe a little bit of Brooklyn, yes. But if they want to get really edgy, they'll be doing. But northern Manhattan, the other outer boroughs, forget it.
Yeah.
So part of why I wanted to do the Bronx was because nobody ever. People still think the Bronx is, you know, gang-run hellhole that it was in 1977. And because obviously nothing has changed in 40 years. But it's fine. It keeps the rents down, so I'm good. But that's what inspired that in particular. Articles of the Federation came out of the editor at the Star Trek department saying, hey, I want you to write a Star Trek version of The West Wing. One of my best novels is another Star Trek novel I did called The Art of the Impossible, which was based solely on a 30-second conversation on a Deep Space Nine episode between two characters. It was a passing reference to the Batrika Nebula incident. About all we learned about it was that it was between the Klingons and the Cardassians. It was ages ago, and peculiarly for an incident that lasted 18 years. Armed only with that, I wrote an entire novel chronicling the Batrika Nebula incident, which was great fun. It's this big sprawling political epic that I did, and I was quite happy with it. I have a series of police procedurals that take place in a city filled with superheroes, which was inspired just by reading a lot of superhero comics and wondering, okay, Batman punches Joker in the nose and hands him off to Commissioner Gordon. Then what happens? It's not like Batman is going to fill out a witness statement or testify in court. State your name for the record, please. I'm Batman. It's not going to happen. So that notion of procedural stuff and how you deal with it when there are superheroes around is something that interests me.
Very cool.
What is it like being a cop in Metropolis or in Gotham City or in Marvel's version of New York?
Good Lord, the amount of paperwork.
Exactly. Yes. Which none of the superheroes have to deal with. They don't have to fill out paperwork.
This is how you become a supervillain.
Exactly. Yes. Supervillains have to deal with paperwork. Or they're bitter people because they deal with paperwork. But, Dragon Precinct that started with the characters. I have a series of urban fantasy stories set in Key West, which were inspired by visiting Key West a lot.
Fair enough.
I did a Sleepy Hollow novel back when that show was on the air. It's the only Sleepy Hollow novel, actually. So, when I was looking for inspiration for that, I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and I wandered around the American wing looking at Revolutionary War era paintings. And it was from one of those that I got the idea for the book, and the story sprouted from there. It also gave me a wonderful bit to include in the novel, because one of the paintings in the American wing is the famous painting of Washington crossing the Delaware.
Yep.
And that incident actually played a major role. The attack on Trenton that Washington was on his way to is a major part of the plot of my story. And the hilarious part is that painting is ridiculously inaccurate. Like everything in that painting is wrong, more or less. And while I was there wandering around, there was a tour guide who was enumerating every single thing about the painting. So I put that in the book.
Nice.
I had Irving and his daughter visiting that wing, and they hear the tour and the tour guide that goes on. Because I figured, what the heck, it was a great. It's really hilarious. And the biggest inaccuracy in it is the way Washington's standing. If he was actually standing like that in the boat, his ass would be in the water 5 seconds later.
Yeah.
But
for our viewers out there, where can they learn more about all of the books you have out there?
the best place to find me online is my website, which is DeCandido.net. That's DeCandido.net, which is just it's a link dump, basically. It links you to my blog, to my Facebook page, to my Twitter feed, my Instagram feed, my Wikipedia page. I also do a lot of writing for Tor.com, where I write about pop culture. I also have a Patreon, where I publish movie reviews, TV reviews, and bits from my works in progress.
Very cool.
And also cat pictures, because everybody loves cat pictures. And my wife and I have the two incredibly photogenic cats. So, and I just did that on the microphone, so that probably made horrible noise. Sorry about that. But we have two incredibly photogenic cats, and we post pictures of them on Patreon. It's patreon.com/crad, K-R-A-D. But again, if you go to DeCandido.net, it links to all of that stuff. And that's, all the most efficient ways of cyber stalking me can be found on that page. And there's an email link, and there's a link to my books on Amazon and all the rest. So,
very good. I encourage all the viewers out there, go check out the website, check out the Patreon, go check out the books. And by check out, I mean actually, go purchase them.
Yes.
And after having read them, go post reviews online.
Please,
like
yes.
Amazon, Goodreads, all the good places out there. Raises the visibility of these books, helps other people enjoy it. All the good stuff.
Yes.
And as always, viewers, until next time, go be creative.